Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be on this knife, and this is the Kershaw Blur. And so this is a knife that there are a lot of videos out there about. It's a knife that has been around and well regarded for a long time. And I just realized I had never made a video on one of these knives. I've had them a couple different times. And so I thought I would make one on this knife in particular. And so the reason why, even though I've had some of these knives, I've had friends, basically throughout my life that have carried and really enjoyed the Kershaw Blur. The reason that I never kept one is because of the recurve blade. So Ken Onion is the designer of this knife. He has designed a lot of knives for Kershaw and in general, kind of a big name in the industry. And one of the things that he really likes to design into his knives is recurves. And, there's kind of the idea that it helps you cut better, especially pulling cuts, but it also makes it harder to sharpen with a sharpening stone. Now, if you use a pull-through sharpener, like a lot of my friends and my dad who have had a lot of Ken Onion design knives, it doesn't matter as much. But I don't use a pull-through sharpener. And a stone, it can be more difficult to sharpen a recurve. Now, that's particularly true on a more abrupt recurve. And I've realized that the Blur here does have a recurve. You can see that the blade comes down, the edge comes down towards the belly and then back up rather than just being straight or continuously curved. But it's a pretty gradual recurve. It's not something that's super accentuated, and so I have sharpened this and I haven't had that much trouble, so it's not a huge deal. I actually have thought at times about getting the partially serrated version of this knife because the serrations are right in that recurve, and then you wouldn't have to deal with the recurve for sharpening it on the plain edge part of the blade. But I got this particular knife because a Walmart near me was going out of business and bumping prices down. So basically it was like 10% off, 20% off, 40% off, 50% off, and they actually went lower than that, but by the time they went lower than that, there was nothing of much value left. Certainly no knives. But I got this when it was 50% off. So rather than, I think, $68, which is still honestly not at all a bad price for a American-made knife, a great price for an American-made knife. Rather than that price, I think it was $34. And so you can't beat that. I mean, there's just no beating that. $34 for an American-made knife with a great warranty, really well made. You can't beat it, and I'm really glad that I got it just because it's a nice knife to have in my collection and to carry and use. And I actually have carried and used this knife a lot since getting it. I've actually gotten some other knives from Walmart at times like that. I got some case trappers that were really inexpensive just because they got marked down. But I'm glad that I got this knife because I've found that I really like it. First of all, it has a really ergonomic handle. You can see that this shape is nice, gentle curves, and for me, it fits really well in my hand. I have used this knife a good bit, like I said, and it feels really, really great in my hand, whether it be a grip like this, kind of a hammer grip, or a pinch grip, which is probably the more common way that I hold a knife while using it. Now, it has this grip tape on it, and the grip tape for me, I could honestly take it or leave it. I think that it's something that maybe adds a little bit of grip. I'd probably prefer that it was just plain, this green anodized aluminum. But, gives it a little bit of extra color, especially because it does match the black coated blade on this version. And I don't hate it. It's all right. It's not terrible. It's not great. Basically, I can take it or leave it. But I do like the feel of the handle a lot. Now, the blade actually does cut really well. I've been surprised with it. It seems to be ground pretty nicely. I think that it is a hollow grind and not a flat grind, but then you have a good amount of strength because it isn't a full grind. Good usable tip there, and I like the blade shape, honestly. It hasn't been too much of a hassle to sharpen, cuts well, really no complaints there. One thing that I do really like about this knife is the action. And there's a couple things about it that I like. First of all, as you can see, it is very smooth. This has no blade plate even when unlocked side to side, but it's really smooth there. And I think that it's on washers. I don't think that it's on bearings. So that's really nice. And so it goes down to about there, and then that's when the speed safe, which is the assisted opening, there's a spring in the handle, engages. Now, it's not an automatic knife. Often people do confuse that. It's not automatic because you don't press a button or a mechanism to open it. You press on the blade itself, and pretty much everywhere, at least in the US, that should make it considered an assisted knife, not an automatic knife. But that is another thing that I like about it, is that it has these thumb studs. These thumb studs are pretty different. You can see that they are heavily angled down towards the tip. And so what that does is it really allows you to get a good hold on that without it being hard on your thumbs. You know, some thumb studs are kind of tough on your thumbs. These, you get a good purchase on that, can open it nice and easily, and it is just really comfortable. Now, it also opens nicely with the speed safe. It never really has not opened for me. Once you get it past the detent, it opens. And speaking of which, another thing I like about the Action is that it does have a detent. Another really classic Canyon design knife from Kershaw is the Kershaw Leek, and then there's the Chive and Shallot and stuff. But the Leek is one that I've had several of. My dad has carried a lot and stuff. But the problem with the Leek is that it doesn't actually have a detent ball in the lock. Or maybe it doesn't have a hole for the detent ball. One of those two. Basically, it doesn't have a functioning detent. So the only thing holding the blade in is the speed safe. And I actually have had a Leek open in my pocket because of that, and I think partly because it's a flipper. So I don't carry, don't own a Leek anymore because of that, because I don't want to get that very pointy tip stabbing into my leg when it opens, because it doesn't have a detent. And then the other thing is, if your speed safe broke on this knife, if the spring broke, which can happen, you would still be able to use this knife. It would still hold itself in the closed position, and you would still be able to flip it open. So I do really like that it actually has a functioning detent, and it locks up really nicely. Also, no forward and back play, really solid. And honestly, I think that a lot of these Kershaw USA made knives are really nicely made and good values. They have some that are pretty fair values, I would say, and you know, you get the great warranty that Kershaw has. They can sharpen them, you know, for their lifetime and everything. So I think that it's a really nice knife. Now, I will say Kershaw, ZT, I think Shun also, their kitchen knife brand, all have me blocked on Instagram. And basically, it was a while back, I criticized a pivot tool that they came out with, or how they came out with it, because it was a proprietary pivot tool that they didn't come out with for like months after the knife came out. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I can't imagine that I was like egregious and you know, offensive in what I said, but I definitely criticized it. And they blocked me, and you know, blocked me on all of their accounts basically. And a little while later, I reached out to them and said from my personal Instagram, like, hey, you know, I really like your knives. I grew up with my dad pretty much always carrying a Kershaw. I own Kershaws. I would love to be able to tag you in my posts when I'm carrying them. And, you know, I make videos about Kershaws and stuff like that. And they basically said, it doesn't sound like you are sorry enough. So then they blocked my personal Instagram. So, you know, I don't really understand that. Honestly, Kershaw also kind of took away their sub forum on Blade forums a while back because of some criticism. So I think it just might be, you know, maybe an individual who is a little bit touchy, or the culture of a little bit of touchiness. But either way, since being banned by them or blocked or whatever you want to call it, I have still used the warranty, and you know, they still honor the warranty. So no worries there. But I do wish that they would unblock me. I think that they should. I think that, you know, like, again, I like their knives. I grew up with them, and I'd love to be able to tag them in posts. But it does have an effect on how often I feel like buying Kershaw knives, I will say. I also don't see their models that are coming out as you know, often as I would if I was able to see their Instagram. So I do wish that they would unblock me. But, you know, it is what it is. Not a huge deal. I've enjoyed this knife, particularly at $34, and I wanted to do a quick video on it. So if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. You can leave any comments below. Also, check out all the links in my description. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.